And with the fate of the Eurozone and perhaps even the EU now squarely in the hands of Italy and Greece, let's get some more opinion on where this is all heading. John Laughland, Director of Studies at the Paris Institute of Democracy and Cooperation, joining me now live to discuss the latest chapter in the Euro crisis. Good to see you today. So certainly a time of change this past week or so. The Greek Prime Minister Papandreou giving up his post to former Vice President of the European Central Bank, while Berlusconi's premiership looks set to go to a former EU Commissioner. Is it possible, John, that we're finally seeing the right people take the right jobs?
Absolutely not. These people who have taken power in Greece and shortly to take power in Italy have never been elected. These are men who have made their entire careers through garnering important appointments in places like the European Commission or the European Central Bank. They have no democratic mandate at all. And precisely what is so frightening about what is happening now, as the European Union and the Euro enters its death agonies, because that's what I think it is the way in which the European Union really is showing, and I say this without any exaggeration, its true nature as a dictatorship. After all, it is Europe which has effectively commanded these two prime ministers to leave office. Papandreou had to leave office the moment he suggested a referendum on the debt package, and Berlusconi had to leave office the moment he said that Italians had become poorer under the euro. So we're seeing really a very ugly development now in Europe, where people are being put in power because they serve the interests and the demands of the European Union, not because they have garnered any electoral support in their home countries, or indeed been, of course, elected.
You're bringing up the issues of democracy, the principles of democracy, but with the Greek Prime Minister Papandreou giving up his post to the former VP of the European Central Bank, Berlusconi stepping aside for a former EU Commissioner, who better to deal with the Euro crisis? Any suggestions?
Well, I think the best suggestion was the one made by Papandreou, the now former Greek Prime Minister. He suggested that this monumental austerity package and the associated debt bailout programme be put to a referendum. That was a very intelligent thing. It was perhaps the most intelligent thing he'd done in his premiership. After all, if you're asking a country to make major sacrifices, that is to say, sacking large numbers of civil servants, people taking pay cuts, pensioners becoming poorer, then surely you need to legitimate it through a public debate and winning a referendum. Papandreou obviously thought he would win the referendum.
But when you say give it up for public debate, I mean, why should the Greeks and Italians actually be given a choice here? I mean, aren't they the ones who elected their governments in the first place, are ultimately responsible for the crisis?
Of course the governments are responsible for the crisis, but there is a co-responsible element, and that is the euro itself. And the Greeks and the Italians, as a matter of fact, as people, did not vote for the euro itself. I'm not saying that they are against it as a nation, but the fact is that the euro was never subjected to a referendum in those countries. But the point is that in situations of crisis like this, it surely makes sense to have the maximum amount of democratic legitimacy, instead of which the European Union has shown that it is afraid particularly of democratic votes. It was terrified when the Greeks announced the referendum. And as I say, with Berlusconi, he never proposed a referendum, but he said that the Italians had become poorer under the euro. In other words, he implied, albeit in a very attenuated way, that Italy could perhaps live without the euro. And that was anathema. It was as soon as he pronounced those words that his political career was ended by the people who now control Europe in Brussels.
Well, indeed, as you were saying, when he did make that announcement for a referendum, he was swiftly summoned to Cannes, where the EU leaders were having their summit there. And as many suggest, he was then just basically given the boot and said, right, well, that was a bad idea for the referendum. You need to be retiring right now. And yet the people there were, for once, perhaps going to be given a voice. Now, it's near impossible to argue that the EU project has failed. I mean, living standards in the bloc are often touted as being the envy of the world, and yet perhaps you would just see it all dismantled because of financial irresponsibility in a peripheral state.
I'm absolutely convinced that the Euro project is at an end. I can't say when it's going to break down, but it is at an end. Yes, there's been financial irresponsibility in Greece and Italy, but the situation has been made worse catastrophic by their membership of the euro. If they had not been members of the euro, the currencies of Greece and Italy would have devalued, and they would have been able to sort out their problems on their own, particularly Italy. They only need bailouts from the European Union because they don't have the option of devaluation. They don't have the option of managing their own economic and monetary affairs. And that is why I say that the euro has caused these problems. Obviously, the underlying debt issue is there, and it's a very serious one. But if they did not have the euro, if they were not in this straitjacket of the euro, then they would be able to sort out those problems on their own. So it's the euro which has aggravated the situation, not the euro which has prevented it, or Europe, which will indeed help it. One of the people that your reporter interviewed in Rome said that we need the help of Europe. No, it's precisely Europe that has got them into this situation.
All right, John Laughland, always a pleasure. Director of Studies at the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation in Paris. Thank you.